Hello, everyone, and welcome to AreaKnows.com. We're very excited to give you another segment of Ask the Expert, and we're really excited to have Adam Robinson, and marketing manager for Cerasis out of Grapevine. So really appreciate you being on today. Thanks a lot for taking the time to answer some of our questions. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in logistics?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Adam Robinson. Work at Cerasis as the marketing manager. Been working for Cerasis for about 18 months. The company's 17 years old. They had never really marketed the company at all. Early on, their technology was kind of a differentiator. It was a no-brainer to manufacturers and distributors because back then in 1998, they didn't have web-based transportation management systems. It was even before there was online banking. So you can imagine how magical that seemed to some people that they could procure trucks and manage transportation via the internet and via technology. And so it was such a good product and they had such good services that they grow really 20% year over year just by word of mouth and referral based stuff. But, like a lot of companies, when the recession hit and when those things kind of happened, and technology started catching up with them, all the other competitors, they really needed to bring someone on to market. So we implemented the first formal marketing plan about 18 months ago, and we're just kind of executing that now and seeing good results from it.
Well, and let's touch on that just briefly. We talked about it a little bit offline before we got started, but can you touch on social media? We did this. We did a whole other Ask the Expert segment just on social media. But how has social media affected your business?
Drastically.
Okay.
I think what it's done is it's really educated our sales force first and foremost, and it's also educated the industry. A lot of manufacturers and distributors, they're really focused on their core. They have to remain efficient. It's really tough for them to understand, what are the best practices? What are the industry trends? What do I need to be looking at to stay innovative and to stay on the cusp of things? And, for us, that content marketing and writing a daily blog and putting out information has really allowed us to understand our customer base a little bit better, has allowed us to go after more enterprise level customers and really educate even our current customers to be better at freight management. If we're going to have technology and services serve them to make them more efficient so they can continue to grow as the economy grows, so they can scale and still remain competitive, we need to make sure that they understand exactly what changes are affecting them, such as, the hours of service that affected a lot of people last year when it went into effect, which is really causing a capacity crunch in trucking right now. And shippers don't know what to do about it. So they need resources, and social media is a great way to network and find people and get information and educate your customers and even your potential customers.
Sure. No, I agree with that. It's been good for us, even on our manufacturing side, and starting to kind of grow that. It's amazing how many people you can reach. And I think that's what's cool about this interview is that we actually met on Twitter, and to see that and to kind of enhance that, I think it's interesting, especially for our industries and what I feel like maybe are a little bit older industries and maybe a little less exciting than some, but they are exciting if you can market it the right way, because there's a lot of cool stuff and a lot of great people. So, logistics sometimes can get overwhelming, or can you give me some of the biggest misconceptions that may cause somebody to spend more money than they should? Tell me some of the misconceptions about logistics.
Well, I think today I mentioned a bit about the capacity crunch and, the volatility of available, reliable, cost-effective transportation is tougher than ever. We have so many, restrictions on us today as businesses that it's imperative that we remain efficient. And a lot of folks want to try and remain efficient, try and grow, and try and scale as they get more freight volume while still trying to do all of it themselves. I mean, you had talked earlier when we got on the call before this interview that, you've kind of just started been on Twitter for kind of a short period of time. And I'm sure you're seeing as you grow in Twitter, as you get more followers, to keep up with that engagement and keep the momentum going and keep making it effective, you have to stay on top of it. Consistency is the name of the game. And I think a lot of companies in logistics think that they can handle the freight payment, the freight auditing, procuring transportation, negotiating freight rates, putting together their own reports in some sort of manual way. And that's just not always the case. And so that's the biggest misconception in logistics, is that manufacturers can do it all. And there's a
Right.
lot of help out there, and that's what 3PLs are for, is to make them more effective and useful and stay competitive.
That makes sense. You know, some of the common terms and stuff like that, that they can get kind of confusing in the freight world. Less than truckload and truckload shipments. Can you kind of give some detail and some color there on some of the terminology that's used in logistics and just to kind of give our viewers a little bit better understanding?
Sure, that's a big issue in the transportation industry, terminology, and I think that's true in any industry. Jargon can be a problem,
Right.
and if you're working in a business environment, if two people aren't using those acronyms or using those phrases the same way, it's really tough to get that desired outcome when you're working together. So, LTL is a phrase that's thrown around a lot. It just stands for less than truckload, and then there's truckload. A lot of freight brokers or brokers, that term is typically reserved for truckload brokering, and there are companies out there who do a lot of that, and there are companies out there who manage more less than truckload. And less than truckload is kind of like a puzzle. When you have a full truckload, you know that you have one product, one shipment fits in the entire truck. When you have less than truckload, it can be several different shippers' freight together, where they all have to come together and hopefully fill up that truck. So It's a lot of work to manage that process because there's so many moving parts.
But you could probably give a little bit more of a discount if you can match that up with, like you said, putting some of those pieces together. So if you can put a smaller item in a truck that's going somewhere, is that kind of the logic behind it?
That's the logic behind it. There's a lot more creativity that you can do. When you have a full truckload, it goes from A to B.
Right.
When you have a less than truckload, you can start doing pool distribution and pool consolidation programs, which means that you can, collaborate with carriers, collaborate between your 3PL and other shippers, take it to a dock, break it out, and continue to drive value and drive down that cost.
Right.
One of the things that you give up is time, but with the capacity crunch, like I had mentioned earlier, simply meaning there's not a lot of full truckloads available because of either government regulation or not enough truck drivers because, frankly, the generational issue and the aging issue of truckers, not being replaced by younger generations. When you go less than truckload, you really have, a lot more moving parts, but you have the availability to find actual space, get it to your customer on time, and find it at a great price. The trick is that you need to have some technology such as a transportation management system to manage all of that.
Right.
It's kind of like any social media management platform for us marketing and sales guys. If we didn't have something to help manage all of these different platforms, we would spend so much time doing it that we'd give up and we'd ultimately not be as effective.
Well, and I think you're right, because it can be kind of intimidating, just that there's so many different things out there. Y'all have a very good blog, by the way, and it's your company's called Cerasis. It's spelled CERASIS, correct? And
That's right.
Your blog is CERASIS. I'm reading it right now. .com /blog, correct?
That's right.
If you get a chance, if you're watching this, check it out. It's a lot of really good stuff, and we do a lot of shipping with our other company, and it's very good. And but I read an article there. Y'all see a trend of manufacturing business coming back to the United States. Is that what? Explain that a little bit, and what you're seeing or what you're reading about.
Honestly, I really think that the ultimate driving force, there are a lot of driving forces, but I think the ultimate driving force comes down to the number one important thing in business, and that's the customer. We live in a consumer-driven economy, and social media continues to amplify that. And I think really at the end of the day, in order to make a customer happy, you have to have a quality product at a good price, and they have to have good follow-up and good customer service. And it's very, very difficult to get products to people on time at a good cost if you're manufacturing it in China and you're waiting 3 weeks for it to come over on a ship. Another issue is quality. If all the designers are in the U.S. and all the production people are in China, and there's an issue with, and you're getting feedback from the U.S. consumers, and you're trying to give that to China, again, the quality and the iterative continuous improvement of your product is slowed down because of all of that time in between.
Right.
But the biggest issue I think underlying there too is just the costs. There's a recent report that came out from the Boston Consulting Group that essentially said the U.S. is now only 5% more costly to manufacture than China. And so that simple cost factor of 5% to me is then even better when you count in the cost of transportation, because it's way more expensive to go from a factory in China by sea or air than it is by truck between maybe Mexico to U.S. or U.S. to U.S. or even Canada to U.S. And so, costs are becoming a non-factor. Quality is a super important factor. But at the end of the day, I think the American consumer is really interested again in buying made in America because they know that that is a quality product. So it's all about the consumer.
You're right. And not only and you're right, and I agree with that. I think the quality is a big issue, and I honestly agree with you, especially shipping things overseas. But not only just on the cost, just the sheer downtime and the opportunity cost while that thing's on a boat. If it was made in the U.S., not only are you paying more to get it shipped over, you could have had it, 3 weeks ago, where that product that you obviously needed for some purpose could have been up and running. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're in marketing sales. Imagine if you called on a prospect and you called 27 times and they finally called you back and said no. Wouldn't you have wished they just answered the phone the first time and told you no?
Right.
It's kind of like that. I mean, waiting 27 calls or maybe 3 weeks to hear a no, you've wasted all that activity. Well, if I'm waiting 3 weeks to hear the feedback of how good a product is or not, I need to know where the failures are even quicker and the successes. And I think that's why you see GE, producing, again, in Kentucky, their dishwashers. Because there was a story that said the designers, when they were closer to the actual, the engineers and the actual production and the manufacturing of it, they found out that a simple screw took up like 1/8 of an inch, and it hurt and it rubbed against the box so badly that it made the screw loose and it decreased the quality of that product. But they knew that because they were in the same building, just like office chatter. I mean, culture and seeing people in person is an important deal to a business's continuous improvement.
Right, and it makes perfect sense. And there's no value you can really put on that, I wouldn't imagine, being right now. Yeah. So that has to be good. I would assume. I mean, that's music to y'all's ears, being in the logistics business, seeing things being shipped here in the U.S. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Because freight volumes are up as the economy improves, as we get more jobs, as we get more manufacturing here. We're going to have higher and higher freight volumes, and a lot of companies. Again, we talked about the biggest challenge of logistics, and that's just managing all of it by yourself. If you're going to try and bring back more freight in this area and your freight volume's bigger, in order to scale and not decrease the cost advantage of moving everything back here by, basically adding manpower, resources, and wasted time to your freight department, it wouldn't even have made sense for you to move it because now you're spending too much money in transportation and freight because you're not doing it as effectively.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, okay, so y'all got logistics and everybody does a great job shipping, right? There's never any issues, right? Nothing ever gets broken.
Oh, sure. No, never.
So let's just say, hypothetically, as somebody freights their product they've spent all this time working on, and just hypothetically, I know it never happens, gets damaged in shipping. So let's give some advice to the people receiving the item. And can you just give us, you mentioned in your blog, I thought it was great, but can you kind of elaborate on some steps to file a claim? What's the most important thing when you receive damaged goods? What can you help our viewers as they're receiving product, give them the best shot possible to recoup something on a damaged item?
Well, first and most important thing is know what you're either shipping or you're receiving. Know what is inside those boxes or inside those pallets, because there's concealed damage, there's apparent damage, there's missing pieces that could be there. So the first thing I would do is inspect and look as thoroughly as possible to see if you've got what you think you should have.
Right.
And then anything that when you receive it, if you notice that anything's damaged, record that right away. Do not discard the freight. Keep it, take pictures, and document everything. And don't take any of that for granted. So, I think we're unlucky, unfortunately, now that I think we have the experience with Amazon packages, how UPS or FedEx will just ring your doorbell and put it on the front step doors.
Right.
Imagine if that's the world you lived in on your dock. You would go crazy. Carriers would just be damaging things. And at the end of the day, carriers are responsible for helping you work with claims, but ultimately, if you want to get the freight claim taken care of the best way possible, you need to be proactive and you need to understand and look what's going on.
Okay. So really just, if you just kind of summarize that, knowing, and it sounds so intuitive, but I know, like, especially if you've got somebody just on a shipping dock that's just receiving this product, might not fully understand. So maybe even building a process just to help them understand what we're freighting in that day, or, kind of building up on some of that could help. Because that sounds like the most important thing. So let's say, somebody down at the loading dock, they get this package in. Maybe they didn't exactly know what it was, but regardless, they accepted freight. They're in a hurry. They've accepted it. Now it's sitting on the loading dock, and let's just say it's a compressor or something, and it just doesn't turn. It's really damaged. Then what? I mean, and then that's when you start the picture taking process, or file it immediately, or what do we got to do then?
Just record everything you can, communicate as much as possible. Make sure you look at the bill of lading and see that all of the details were included beforehand. But really, what I would do is contact the carrier immediately, or if you're working with a third-party logistics provider like us, communicate to them, hey, this isn't working properly, and start the communication as soon as possible.
Okay, that's great advice. And again, that's something that sounds intuitive, but as you got for some of our larger companies, or even some of our smaller ones, they get a package in, they set it in the corner, they don't need it for 2 weeks or whatever, and then they go to open it up. So maybe that could even be part of the process too, is physically open up the box and look at it, even more so than just taking off the truck. So just kind of in summary, can you give me just the most important factors to consider? If you're out there, you're starting up a business or whatever, you're looking for a freight company, or maybe you've had issues and you're trying to outsource some of this stuff. Give me three of the most important factors in finding a freight company.
Definitely how long they've been doing this, and what is their customer makeup? What kind of verticals do they serve? Do they have customers that ship freight that are similar to you? Because in the freight world, commodities are such an important factor. For example, we're really strong in the industrial space. We're really strong in the automotive aftermarket. So we understand the gotchas and what could come up, what kind of damages happen with things like remanufactured transmissions or whatever. So I would also look for somebody who plays to your needs. So if you're a primarily full truckload shipper, you want to look for someone who is strong in full truckload. If you're having issues with, spending too much time processing freight, are you seeing that, I'm using Excel spreadsheets to manage my freight department? Well, maybe I need, some automation or some technology. So look for a company that offers, technology to make your life easier. But at the end of the day, really what is important in this industry is reputation.
Right.
A lot of freight brokers and that 3PL sometimes gets a bad reputation in the industry. It's a middleman. Why would I need that? Well, some of that's gone away. I think the industry's grown up quite a bit since deregulation, especially over the last 5 years. Although the raise in the broker bond from 10,000 to 75,000 was quite contentious, quite political in nature. The goal of it was to show that 3PLs are committed to be that middleman to drive value for you so you can focus on your core. So I would ask for references. I would say, what's your testimonials? I want to talk to your customers. And if the approach from the 3PL is one focused on freight costs alone, that would be a big red flag for me. If you're going to go out and hire a third-party logistics company, you regularly ship freight, you want to look for a long-term partner. It's one of those things that continually drives value over time. And if you don't have a 3PL who kind of mimics that partnership relationship in the way they're speaking to you, and the way they're selling to you, and the way they're setting expectations, then you should run. Nobody should come to you and say, guaranteed I'm going to save you 20% on your freight. Well, it's not always the hard costs that are the most value. It's sometimes the soft costs, like time spent on it. How much are you losing on freight claims? Are you missing out because you're not auditing your freight bills and carriers are charging you the wrong thing? So you want to look for that holistic, turnkey, trustworthy business partner. That's what I'd say.
Okay, and I think that makes sense. And I think that's just like most other industries. If you are just looking for the cheapest, sometimes it might not be the best, or might not provide the most value. long term, especially if it's obviously in a competitive price range. So. Listen, Adam, I really appreciate you being on today. Is there anything else you have? Anything that I would encourage people to go to y'all's blog and check that out, because there's a lot of good information on there. So we really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can have you on again sometime.
Sure. Well, the last thing I would say is, we write a blog post every day, and you talked about freight claims, and next month we'll be having a freight claims webinar on June 18th. So if you want to learn all about freight claims, it's really educational in nature, gives you a lot of good tips, and that 60-minute webinar is going to be packed full of it. So it's definitely worth checking out if you ship freight.
Well, cool. Well, listen, man, we really appreciate it. AreaKnows.com, Ask the Expert, Adam Robinson with Cerasis, and hopefully we can have you on again, Adam, and hope you have a great week.
Well, thanks for having me. Really had a pleasure. Thank you.